And we're back for another session. We are back, and this time we're going to discuss artboards in Adobe Illustrator. So, a lot of people don't understand the power of artboards, and Illustrator just recently gave a lot more functionality to your artboards. So there are two things we're going to take a look at. We're going to look at the general sizing of the artboard, and then we're going to look at the arrangement of artboards, and finally we'll probably just touch on saving things out, okay, when you have multiple artboards. So let's look at our artboard sizing options. Now whenever you start a document, let's say we are about to start a document. In our artboard, it allows you to select the number of artboards. You can select the spacing, how many columns, you can select the size of the artboards and your bleed, etc. Essentially what this does is it allows you to create a full layout from start. But the problem is maybe you don't know where you want to go with it as is. So you may start drawing and then you may want to change your artboard, or maybe develop a web layout or some text information, whatever the case may be, and then you want different artboards, and you may even want different sizes. So you don't want them necessarily uniform. So if you do, you can set all your options here, and we're going to touch on these outside of this. Just remember that they're consistent where we're going to touch base on them at. Okay, so let's cancel that out. That's usually when you start a new document. So if we were to look in our tools panel, and again, your tools panel may be on the left hand side. I always change mine to be on the right hand side. I like to have as much viewing space, so I like to have everything on one side. So we're going to click our Artboard tool. If you click it, you'll notice that it highlights your artboard. And one of the things you can do is you can fluidly change the shape of your artboard, but you may not know the dimensions offhand. If you look, you'll notice that here in your top menu panel or options panel, you'll notice that you can change the width and you can change the height. You can also link and unlink the aspect ratio so that if you're changing it, it will stay in scale and proportionate. But if you don't want to, you can always change those sizes, and you'll notice your artboard changes accordingly. Okay? You can also change the value of the location of the artboard relative to your working space. If you can change your registration point, which means it's going to reference where it moves in regards to the space that it's at. So if we were to click 0, 0, now it's referencing this registration point, the upper left. And if we were to go to the middle, and let's say change that to 0, 0, you'll notice that the middle is now where the upper left registration point was. So you have a bunch of options in terms of laying out or moving or adding. Now, in this, you'll notice there's a button. It says move or copy artwork with the artboard. Let's change from this tool, okay? And let's make some shapes on the board. And let's change their colors. And you'll notice while these shapes are here, if you were to select your Artboard tool and you move it, it's going to move the shapes with your artboard. If you were to actually lock that layer, and you can move the artboard and the shapes will remain still. If you go up and you select this option and click it and unlock that layer, now when you move it, you don't have to worry about it moving your artwork with it. It's an excellent option for when you're changing an artboard or moving an artboard away from artwork that is on the actual artboard. You don't have to worry about different aspects of it changing or trying to lock different areas. You can just simply click to move or unclick to keep it from moving with it. Very, very, very simple thing. It's something you should always remember because it will come into play. Okay? This video safe areas, essentially, if you are using this to, let's say, make a video or some kind of animation, it will show you the safe areas for where your content needs to be in your video on the artboard. You can click that to turn it off. Now, if you want to show crosshairs, you would just click the button in the middle. And all that does is show you the crosshair segments of where the middle area is of your actual artboard. Okay? It helps you with alignment, things of that nature. If you wanted to, let's say, add guides, it also helps you easily line up with the center marks of your actual piece. Okay? So that's the benefit of the crosshairs. You can turn them on, you can turn them off, you can turn multiple ones on at the same time. You can show the center mark, which is essentially just like if you're looking through a camera or something. A lot of older cameras had these marks where you can center your photo and or image. So that's what you're looking at. Now if you were to click, let's say we double click the Artboard tool, you're going to get an Artboard Options box. Same thing as if you were to click this little button up here. And in your Artboard Options, it allows you to rename your artboard. Let's say we wanted to name this Awesome Sauce. As you can see, I couldn't spell that at first. But anyway, and you'll notice that the name changes with respect to how you're changing the artboard. And you can, again, change your width and height. You can also do some preset selections depending upon what you're doing. We have screen values, iPad, iPhone, different values and resolutions depending upon what it's supposed to be fitting. Okay? So that's one option. You can show your crosshairs and center marks in here as well. And fade the region outside of the artboard, or you can actually keep it gray. It's up to you. White, faded. You can update while dragging or not update, which in essence changes how the actual objects on your artboard react. And you can just click OK. If you want to scale, your proportions, you can always click to unlink and link them here, or you can just change them accordingly within here. Click Constrain Proportions, and it will constrain them. You'll notice the linking button here, and you click OK. When you come out, you can still use the tool, and you can still move everything around. And your options for the items that are actually on your artboard, they won't move if you're just simply resizing it. They'll only move when you're moving the physical artboard. And as long as any part of your artwork is touching that artboard, it's going to move it. Think of it like sticky paper, and that's what's going to happen to it. Okay? Now, the last thing we're going to touch on are the Artboard Layout options. And this is what we're going to talk about right before saving things out. Now, if you were to click on your artboard layer, and if that again is not there, you would click Window, and you would scroll down to Artboards, and it would come up, usually next to your Layers panel. And on here, you'll notice that your Awesome Sauce artboard is listed. And you'll notice you have a few things down here. It looks familiar. You have Move Up, Move Down, New Artboard, and Delete Artboard. And what you can do is you can click away and add multiple artboards. And you'll notice that as you do it, you have more and more of them added to the stage. Now you can draw out artboards as well if you have your Artboard Option tool selected. So you can continue to draw them. They could be different sizes. Doesn't matter. You can draw artboards within artboards. Drag it in so you can get sections and edit them within that artboard, and you can click the X's to actually delete these with the tool. But whenever you're developing art and you make a bunch of artboards, to keep them uniform at the same size, what it does in your Artboards panel is when you click the new tool, it keeps it at whatever the size of your last artboard was. And in doing so, when you have your artboards like this, it will keep it consistent in terms of the spacing between the actual artboards themselves. And you can do like you did with your previous artboard, and you can rename these artboards to anything you want. See? Now, if you want to delete them, you can always click the delete button, select the artboard you want to get rid of, and the numbers will adjust accordingly. So if we got rid of this one, the number 2 artboard with a really funky name, you'll notice that number 2 is now the anything artboard. But the problem is we now have a gap between our artboards. Let's say we want to close that gap. What we would then do is we would go and click the drop down option, and we will go to rearrange artboards. And when we do that, it brings up the panel that looks similar to what we saw when we were creating a new artboard, and it allows us to change our layout. So we can change how many columns, which you know are vertical, and we can change the spacing between them. Our rows will be unlimited, but we have to specify the number of columns. Now, we can change it to, let's say, 1 column. And the layout can go across or down or whatever the case may be. And what you'll notice is that we can change the spacing. If we click OK, everything is now spaced by 20 points between artboards, but they're all going down the 1 column. We can always go back. Let's say we just make a bunch of new artboards. Alright? We click rearrange artboards. We can then, let's create a 3 column from left to right setup with 100 points in between. And we click OK, and we'll notice we now have a different column setup. All of these artboards are arranged accordingly, and to activate any of them, you need only click within that artboard. And as you see, as we click, each artboard is being highlighted because that is now the active artboard. Okay? Now, here comes the complicated part. It's not actually complicated, but when you want to arrange these, you can always shift and change the artboards in their order and of where they actually are. But in essence, what this does is it controls how your file is saved out. If you decide to save this file, like let's say we save it as a PDF, or not, let's say we save it as a JPEG. Let's go to File, and let's go to Export. And when you're exporting, it gives you the option to use artboards. And when you do that, you can select all, and it will actually save the entire range of artboards in order. Or you can select range, and you need only remember the number of artboards, or which artboards are represented by what number, and you select the range you want. You may want only 1 through 10. You may only want 4, 5 through 10, or, and that could have been 4 through 10, I know, but 3, 7 through 10, or just any random number artboard, because you have to select that specific one, or you may want a series of them while excluding others, but you have to be very specific. You have to know which artboards represent which. And the best way to do that is as you're looking at them, either remember how your columns are set up from left to right, how many columns there are. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on and so forth. Or you have to remember how you laid them out in this actual order on your artboard panel. Okay? And once you do that, you can select the range that you want, save your items out, and they will save out accordingly with individual unique file names that correspond to the overall project. So if this project was named the best, you would get an output if I clicked all of the best -01, the best -02 throughout all the artboards numerically in order of how many artboards there actually are. So it's very powerful, something you need to use and get used to if you're making multiple elements on an artboard. You may be storyboarding, you may be setting up concept art, you could be setting up different elements, let's say iconography or anything for the computer itself, and this is a means by which to separate them without having multiple large files. Alright? And that's pretty much it for our artboard option explanation. You should fool around with it, go back, make sure you understand the things that I was discussing, review it a few times, and then what we're going to do is we're going to touch on some of the other options such as gradients and blob brush and pencil tool patterns as we move forward. So go back, brush up on your skills, and make sure you're all set for the next set of lessons. And I look forward to talking to you guys again.